is the Video Film Podcast, and my name is Adam.
And I'm Jesse.
And this is the podcast that Adam can't stop doing because he's afraid that he'll gain all his weight back. So he's got to keep doing it, and it's a good thing. And he likes doing it too.
It's not a bad reason to do a podcast. Like, I've heard of way worse reasons to do podcasts.
And speaking of that, I'd like to congratulate myself. Today is April 14th. It's the 2-year anniversary of me starting to do a calorie restricted diet consistently for the last 2 years. So it's my 2-year anniversary.
Very good. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. And to quickly mention that, back in middle of December, I made you another ongoing bet in my series of ongoing commitments that I would restrict my calorie to a certain number, and I had some restrictions in there and some free days and stuff. And so I've successfully done that. I don't owe you any money, and I'm going to renew my commitment for another 3 months. I'm going to go until the middle of July. Let's go until May, June, July. I'm going to go until July the 14th. We'll go until July 15th. So I'll do the same bet, exactly the same commitments until July 15th. Are you actually writing anything down? No, you're not, right? You're not.
I was, yeah.
What?
I was writing it down.
Honestly? You don't have to do anything.
I know, but it's fun to write it down, though.
Oh, okay. I don't believe you, actually. You're doing something completely different. But that's good.
So what's the restriction?
Do you actually care, or do you don't really
I'm asking because it'll help you. I'm asking for you. What is it?
Okay, well, I know what they are. It's 12,000 calories per week. And I'm allowed 2 free days per month that are not counted for calories. And also I restrict myself to only drinking 1 day a week. And I also have 2 days per month that are not included for drinking days. But the calories still count. They're just free days. And I'm also going to add another little caveat that that only applies when I'm at home. If I'm out somewhere and I'm on a patio, I'm allowed to drink if I'm on a patio out somewhere. So that restriction only applies when I'm at home by myself. Sadly. And
why is that sad?
And if I'm out of the province, if I'm not in Regina, I'm not sticking to this. And if somebody comes to visit me, I'm not sticking to it either. So those are also the other 2 caveats. So there's lots of caveats. But I'm able to stick to it, and if I don't do this, then I owe you $1,000. I think it is. So you'll just all of a sudden have $1,000 in your bank account one day. And I tell you, it's the toughest right before the end. It's weird because I've been doing it for the last 4 months, and it wasn't that hard through the full months that I had to stick to the commitments. And then right up this last week has been the most difficult. It's very strange that, like, when you see that end in sight, you're like, oh, I just got to get to the end. Just got to get there. Just a few more days, and then all the restrictions are gone. I can do whatever I want. And then when I get to the end, and then I'm like, oh, everything's off. I'm like, I feel like shit. I can eat whatever I want. I can drink. I can do whatever I want. And I feel like shit. It's better to get right back onto a plan, which is why I'm renewing it starting tomorrow until July 15th.
So did you give yourself any days where you could do whatever you wanted?
Yeah, I just told you. Two free per month.
No, I mean, like, between the 2 bets. Like, did it end today?
Yeah, it ended today.
Oh, okay. So you haven't, but
as I take a sip of beer.
Okay, so you were allowed to do whatever you wanted today.
Today is off. It's
good.
I realized I made the commitment. I had to go back and listen to our podcast from December 16th, where it was recorded. It was on record. I said, let's go until April 14th. So I thought, well, that's a bit of a loophole. I said, we'll go until April 14th.
Right.
So technically, as of April 14th, it's done.
Yeah, it's done. If you said up to and including, that would be different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I caught myself. I found a loophole in what I had set out, even though I knew that I meant until the end of today, but didn't matter. It's what I said on record.
That's right.
That's how desperate I get during coming up to the end of these things. That's why I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fucking. You got to just lay out the. You just got to do what needs to be done. Just do what needs to be done, and don't think too much.
Yeah. Basically, you gotta block everything else out.
There, that's it for me. We can move on. We don't have to talk about it. We can just move on and
Okay.
talk about anything else you want to talk about.
Oh no, that was great. I'm glad you're renewing your commitment and that I don't have to actually do anything. Also nice
Yeah, we don't have
for
to talk
me.
about it. Let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. So we didn't even say the movies that we watched. Do you remember these movies? When did you watch these? Did you watch these recently? Because I watched them like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, a week and a half ago. What were they? The Spanish Prisoner
The
from
Spanish
1998, directed by David Mamet. Meeks Cutoff from 2011. I don't know who directed it though.
Kelly Reichardt.
Oh yeah, Kelly Reichardt.
Yeah. So one movie, Meeks Cutoff, we were lucky because nothing really happens in the movie. It's more of an atmosphere of dread and confusion, um, and hopelessness. And the other movie, I was lucky because I'd seen it 5, 6, 7 times at least because I love it so much. So I remember most of the stuff. But if it wasn't this easy, like if these were two movies that we had never seen and they had a lot going on, I wouldn't remember anything. So we got lucky this week that there was a week and a half after we watched them that we did the podcast.
Okay, we got lucky. Is that it for the episode?
No, that we can talk about them
Oh, okay.
and that we'll remember stuff.
Okay.
Like I'm sure you remember all the amazing things that happened in The Spanish Prisoner because
Uh
it's such a it's become one of my favorite movies, I think.
yeah, I like it. I've rewatched it a lot.
Even though like the mark of a really good con movie is exactly what's going to happen, but every time you're kind of surprised
Yeah.
because you're going along with it and you're like, is wait a second, is Ricky Jay in on the con? Ricky Jay must be in on the con. And then you're like, oh, wait a second. No, he just got stabbed. How did I not remember that
Right.
after the first 7 times I've seen it?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, is Rebecca Pigeon in on the con? Like maybe, but wait a second, she must be.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, oh wait, no, isn't she? She's not. Would the FBI come? And even though the FBI guys are fake, you're like, well, but she didn't really have a part in it. And then she comes back, and you're like, oh, of course she's in on it. Like it,
That's a different experience than I knew. I remembered all those details. The only
wow.
stuff that confused me and still does is the
Hmm.
very ending.
Right.
And the very ending when the Asian people start speaking with like cowboy accents
Right.
and you're like, wait, they were all along. They kept talking about Japanese tourists in the background,
Yeah.
and it's like they were there, they were doing something, they were involved, but I did forget at the very end they announced something that I'd completely forgotten even this watch through, which is his boss set the whole thing up.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten that, and I don't even think that's necessary. Like one of
Yeah.
the who are they? FBI Japanese FBI
Well, the
agents.
U.S. Marshals. They're U.S.
They're
Marshals.
U.S. Marshals. So they say something like yeah, we were watching you this whole time, and your
Hmm.
boss set the whole thing up, and we needed to save the process. Is that what they were trying to do? That's why they didn't intervene earlier, trying to
Um,
figure out where it ended up, where it got
I
sold
think they were
to.
trying to figure out where they were going to give it to or sell it to. Yeah,
Yeah.
before they before they bring the net down on everybody.
Because that's the only part, like, there's no big reveal that the boss was the guy behind the thing the whole time.
Yeah.
Because the boss is the one guy that seems desperate who's going, um, my whole life savings is involved in this. I just need
Yeah.
it back. I suspect you. I'll do anything for you to give it back to me.
Yeah.
And then
What
it's revealed that he set this whole thing up.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense either that he bails him out of jail as well,
Right. That's what I
because they
mean.
already have the process at that point, right? He doesn't have the process at that point, right? The Ed O'Neill and the FBI, the fake FBI has the process, right?
Yeah, it was a week and a half ago. See, now I'm gonna get confused again.
Okay,
That's too
let's
much. The boss being in on it at the very end, and
yeah,
they don't even show the boss in handcuffs. It's a throwaway line
yeah.
by the U.S. Marshal.
So is it the boss played by Ben Gazzara, or is it maybe one of the other bosses?
Well, I don't know who Ben Kazara is, so
He's the only boss that you really see. Like he's the boss who's always talking to him. But then there's a couple other bosses um, that he meets with.
no. I don't know who you're thinking of, but it's that one guy that's what's the
I know which
give
guy
me
you're
the
talking about. Yeah, he's played by Ben Gazzara. We're talking about the same guy.
that's the guy. They
Okay,
name him or something. They don't. I don't think they go your boss. They say it, that guy's name, like it's him behind the thing.
they do
Behind
say the name, but I
He's
forget what
stealing it. He's
I
stealing the
for.
process from himself
Yeah,
to sell
which
it
make
somewhere.
which makes no sense really.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're right, and it's completely unnecessary too. It's completely unnecessary that they say that because it's enough that anyone would want to steal it.
Right.
And he's doing way too much work for a guy who's set this thing up, and everyone else who's doing the con should just be doing their part, and he could just stay out of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I shouldn't even have started talking about that because it does seem I can't explain it and I don't understand it. Let's
Mhm.
look at what I wrote down. His fast talking dialogue certainly distracts viewers. Uh, Gives advantage that stuff like talking about saving security footage tapes isn't necessarily so obvious going to come back. So obviously going to come back. What
Yeah,
did I mean by that? Can you explain what I wrote down?
I think when they're in like the Saint Esteph or whatever it is, and they're talking to the security guys, and he's like, "Hey, what do you do with those tapes?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, we save them for insurance." It's pretty obvious that that's going to come back later. Like, there's
Yeah.
no reason for anyone to be talking to those guys and asking them what they do with their tapes.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it does come back, but then it doesn't go the way that you predict it will. I'm gonna have to shut my window because it's so loud.
I can hear it now,
Why didn't you say something?
but like just now, I can hear it though.
Right, just a second.
Just this second.
So yeah, it's good. It's good. He's misdirecting you with
Yeah,
stuff like that. That seems like if you're trying to spot the con or figure it out in advance, you'd be like, oh, well, clearly the tape's gonna matter because he's caught on tape. But then right at the last second, when he's going back to that island or wherever they were,
yeah,
he's like, oh wait, his fingerprints are on the book. And then he turns around and he goes back, and that saves him. Then they do a reveal that Rebecca Pigeon had planted a gun on him, and all that stuff
yeah,
comes together. Oh, it's great. David Mamet's writing. It's awesome.
yeah.
Um,
It's fantastic.
okay. I got lots of stuff written down, but I haven't reread it in 2 weeks, so I don't
Me
remember.
neither. Me neither. I gotta reread some stuff.
All right, you wanna pause then, or what? What's one of us
No,
should.
it's all right. I think like is it are you and I do you think the only people who watched this movie like for the first time and we saw Ricky Jay and we thought he must be in on the con? Like do people know who that is? Do you think?
Do people know who Ricky Jay is? Sure.
Like do you think they knew who that was? Like let's say the first time I watched it was 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Like I couldn't imagine that anybody knew who he was 20 years ago.
I don't know if I knew who he was 20 years ago.
I thought we talked about him like when we were in high school.
Oh,
I could be wrong.
you could be right too. I have no memory of that. I know that
Hmm.
I knew him as of Deadwood. Once I saw him in Deadwood, he started popping up in a lot of things, and I started to be like, who
Mm.
is this guy? Why am I seeing him do magic shows? What's the deal with this guy? Wait a minute. He wrote a book about how to use playing cards as weapons. That's probably you probably
Right.
told me about that, and that's probably when we started being like, what is the deal with this guy? He's an actor, he's a magician, he's a
Yeah.
murderer, apparently.
Yeah, I had no idea that he was a magician like the first, time that I saw him. Like I thought he was an actor.
Sure.
Probably the first movie, I don't know, it couldn't have been Spanish Prisoner. Maybe Heist was the first time.
Right. Yeah, he started showing up in a whole bunch of movies that were a little bit lesser known. They weren't like mainstream, I guess, movies. And then he was always playing really cool roles and
Yeah.
and then he just became more and more interesting. So you're saying that the first time you saw this movie, you suspected him as being in on the con because you knew who he was.
I can't remember that, but do you think that if people saw this movie for the first time now, that they would know who Ricky Jay is enough to be like, oh, he must be in on it.
I guess I don't talk to enough people about movies.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I don't really have any friends or anything, so I couldn't tell you what other people would say about it.
It's just you and me.
Yeah.
It's just you and me. Um, yeah. I liked it. One of the things that this movie did this time that I watched it was it kind of, for me, it called attention to the fact that films are an illusion
Hmm.
because of the setups in the movie that they do and how you kind of get you get pulled along in it, but you know that it's not real, and that's kind of like what film is.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think I'm remembering it correctly, but I wrote that down because there's there was something specifically in it that made me think, oh, okay, he's saying that film is sort of fake. Like
Hmm.
just when you make films, that's also like kind of a con. Like you're being manipulated.
Yeah. Interesting. Wonder what line made you have that thought.
It wasn't a line. I know it was a scene, but I can't think of exactly what it was.
Hmm.
Um anyway, um what else we talking about? I think one of the best things about the movie is that you think it's one con, and then because he's like a guy who solves problems, he gets conned, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the FBI." And then he goes to the FBI, but it's not the real FBI.
Hmm.
And he thinks he solved the problem, and then it gets him into a bigger problem.
Yeah.
That I think that's what this movie does really well. Is
Hmm.
you think when you think he's out of danger, he gets in worse trouble or worse danger.
Yeah, it's tough to say. There's so many twists and turns in it that it's tough to say exactly which one makes it go over the top of being one of these favorite con movies of all times for
Yeah.
us. It could be that one. It could be the fact that like you're like, oh, he's going to the FBI. Movie's only halfway done, so we know it's not over. But are we suspecting those guys at that time? No, I don't think I was.
No. I
Yeah,
didn't suspect the FBI guys at all. That was like the biggest twist.
the twists
That
keep coming right up until the last with the Japanese American accent. That's the only thing that bugs me in this movie is the
yeah.
cowboy accent that girl has, the Japanese
Yeah.
U.S. Marshal at the very. Well, sugar, it'll take me down to the farm. You're like, wait, what? It seemed like it was dubbed over. It was so obviously dubbed
Yeah.
over, and you're like, that was unnecessary.
Well, they could have had like normal American accents.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It didn't need to be that so distracting. But I
All
did
yeah,
write
all
down
they
my
had to
my last line. 100% forgot. Klein set it all up. What? So his boss's name was Klein, and I think that's
Okay.
what they say. Your boss Klein set it up, or Klein set the whole thing up. So I did write it
Right.
down here. That's the only thing. And then right above that, I wrote about the Japanese tourists and but I did write down they also so he come so that's another twist and turn. Just before that, he figures
Mhm.
out Rebecca Pigeon is in on the con because he doesn't see them, but we as the audience see Rebecca Pigeon talking to the other bad guys, so we know she's in
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
And then he gets into the car with her and they drive away from the airport and she's going, "What happened back there? What happened back there?" So he hasn't figured it out at that point. When does he figure it out? It's just before
I
they get
thought
on the
he
boat.
No, I thought he's figured it out at that point.
No, he hasn't because he doesn't see them talking. We see them talking,
Oh,
and then she comes running back. So as the audience, we know she's in on it. So as when they're driving away together in the car, she goes, "What happened back there?" Because she's trying to figure out if he knows.
yeah.
And he goes, "I don't know," because he doesn't realize the cops are all pulling up because there was a gun in
Yeah.
his bag.
Yeah.
But he hasn't figured it out at that point. It's only like a minute later. It's like within a minute it's right when they're about to get on the boat. They run and they get on a bus. That's it. They're not in a car. They run and they jump on the
Yeah.
first bus.
But yeah, like a shuttle, yeah.
It's a shuttle. And the part that doesn't make sense is a bunch of Japanese tourists are getting on this shuttle. Of course, they're US Marshal agents. So how did the Japanese US Marshal agents know to have a shuttle waiting there that they would jump on to escape and go to a boat that they could
I
get
think
ahead of them?
I think they're following them, right? So they must have gotten on. Did they get on first or did they get on after?
They jump. There, a bunch of Japanese people are in line for this shuttle bus, and they jump on it.
But
So
are they the marshals though, or are they
it's
different
it's
Japanese
it's
people?
possible that it's just a coincidence, but I think they're in the line. And
Okay.
I don't know exactly, but it doesn't
I
really
think
make
the
sense.
Well, I think one of the things in the movie is that you're supposed to just see Japanese tourists everywhere.
Hmm.
So it gets you familiar with just seeing that, and it's supposed to be kind of like a visual joke. And then at the end, there's a real purpose for them.
Hmm. Hmm. I still don't know how Steve Martin got ahead of their shuttle onto the boat,
Yeah.
and also how the Japanese people, even if they were following them, how they got ahead and then got on the boat before them. It's a little hokey there at the very end, but there's so much going on that people don't really pick that out. It's only because I've watched this about 50 times.
So I think what happens is that
Don't try to
every
justify
no, I think what happens is that when Campbell Scott is kind of hanging out on the dock,
it. Uh-huh.
right? That everybody else gets on the boat because they know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Like the marshals know that Steve Martin gets on the boat, so they get on the boat.
Yeah.
And then like they're kind of doing it just out of frame, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
is my interpretation of it because they spend so much time on the stupid fucking dock um at the end that everybody else knows exactly what's going to happen except Campbell Scott, so they're all getting on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I interpreted it.
Sure.
So it's not like a big, like um they're not all there, an hour before, right? They're just kind of they show up, they
Yeah,
get on the
you
boat.
already said that. You already
But
said it.
but the one thing that you're right about is I don't know how he missed Steve Martin like getting there because he's kind of like right in front of the boat.
No.
So I don't know how he misses Steve Martin getting on the boat.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. That's that's fine. Um I liked Rebecca Pigeon's character because she's kind of like at first you think she's a red herring because she's way too involved in everything. Like she's obviously trying to get information, but not too overtly. And then you're like, oh, this is like too much. And then, and then when he does the thing with the FBI, you realize she wasn't involved in that. So you're like, oh, it was a red herring. And then it goes back to being not a red herring,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which
And I
which
guess
is
it's one of the kind of characters in a movie that you're like, why doesn't he go? Why doesn't he take her up on her offers, her
yes,
advances? And you're mad at these male characters in movies that are like they're trying to go for some other girl that you're
yeah,
like, I guess they're for some reason they like some other
yeah.
girl, but there's this awesome girl right there. Why don't they?
Hmm.
And I always get mad at those guys in the movies and that happens a lot in movies. So this is just one of those characters that you're like, why doesn't he? She's right there, man.
Yeah.
And then you realize that he was right. His instincts were right.
So I guess what the part of the con is that they give him two sort of wildly different women to choose from too, right?
Yep.
Is that they put one who's like a down to earth, um, you know, lowly secretary, and then one who's this kind of princess.
Yeah. And that is the Spanish prisoner Khan, right? Ed
Hmm.
O'Neill explains it. Did I get his name right? Ed O'Neill?
Yeah, I don't
Oh, yeah.
know.
Oh, good for me. He explains it in that quick scene.
Hmm.
I like that David Mamet likes Ed O'Neill for some reason, just likes him.
Yeah,
And I like when who did I just say? David Mamet?
yeah.
Who? Oh, David Milch. Yeah, it was. I think David Milch wanted Ed O'Neill to be Swearingen in Deadwood.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be great.
I like when people just see something and I go, Ed, what's it, Bundy? What was his
Al
character?
Bundy.
Al
Al Bundy.
Bundy?
Yeah.
You're like, what do they see in Al Bundy that I don't give a fuck about, right? Like I
Yeah.
like when people that I respect pick somebody like that and go, "Oh, they're powerful actors." And you're like, Al Bundy is a good actor. Like why I just respect people that I mean, I trust
Right.
people that I respect like that. So
Yeah.
they both see something in him because they've cast
Yeah.
him in cameos in stuff. So Mamet put him in Spartan as well as a quick cameo.
Yeah.
He's just an
Yeah.
awesome cameo in that movie. He just walks in. Where's the girl? I love that that appearance.
But I
Uh,
think wasn't Ed O'Neill part of the theater thing that Mamet had going in Chicago?
oh, there you go. I don't know the history. I just know that he's put him in a couple things. I believe you.
I thought he was part of that at least at one point.
Sure.
And then he got the Al Bundy role, and then everybody, of course, knew him as Al Bundy, right?
I believe you. Sure.
I
That would
think
make
that's what
sense.
happened. Yeah, I think that's what happened, but I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he comes in and he does this quick thing and he explains the Spanish prisoner con. And the
Hmm.
Spanish prisoner con isn't it something about you're promising somebody a fortune? Like like what is the spread? I can't remember exactly what he
So
describes.
it's essentially this guy, and this is the same con as they do on email now, right? But so it's essentially this guy comes up to you and he says, "I used to be the prince of Spain, and I escaped, but my sister is being held captive.
Right.
If you and I'm rich, I
Yeah.
can't get my money because it's in Spain. I'm rich. My sister's being held captive. All you need to do is give me $50,000 so I can either bribe somebody. I think there's different things that you could say, but it's
Yeah.
either bribe somebody or get an army or some sort of special forces people or whatever, and get her out, and then somehow also you get the money. I don't know how you get I don't know how you free up the money.
Right.
Um,
So
or
essentially,
you
it's a promise of a girl and a fortune.
a
It's a
girl and a
promise of a
fortune.
princess and a
Yes.
fortune.
Which they don't do in this movie
Not really.
because he does get promised a princess, sort of, but but that's all he gets promised, or really the a date he's being promised.
Yeah, I guess in their world, as soon as you're in their family, you're
Mhm.
in. Like he's immediately
Right.
bringing him into the clubs, getting
Hmm.
signing him up with Swiss bank
Yes.
accounts and shit. Like so, as soon as he marries into their family, he's part of the upper class. It's a
Yeah.
world that I'll never know. It's a world of succession people that I'll never know. But I guess once you're in, and money it just doesn't even matter anymore.
It's a world that also none of the people in the movie know, because they do the great thing where they go back to all these locations and they're like, that's a closet.
Yeah,
And he's like, "Oh, I thought it was like a whole back room where he was getting a card for me to," and then they go in and they like open another door and he's like, "That's another closet."
hmm,
And then he goes in and he looks and it's supposed to be like a pool, but it's like a tiny bathroom.
right,
And he's like, and they're like, "Come on, man." They're like, I love that the police don't believe him. They're like, "Come on, this is all so fucking stupid."
yeah.
But it's funny. It's funny, and it just it kind of, that's exactly right. That's why I said film is an illusion. Because a
Oh.
lot of it is just you just put like a light somewhere
Hmm.
and you're like, that's the pool back there. Or you know, somebody goes into a door and it's supposed to be another room or it's supposed to be somewhere else, right?
Hmm.
But it's really, and I think that's part of the film as an illusion thing, right? Because you believe all this stuff at first,
Hmm.
right? Like you don't see where the people are going, you don't see where that guy comes out of with the drink, and you realize it's funny to think that he must have been just standing in a little closet
Hmm.
for a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
Well, he gets the drink. He goes into a tiny closet that he can barely fit in. He grabs a drink. He waits 30 seconds and then he comes out of the tiny closet.
Right.
Like
Right.
how ridiculous that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. You were sitting around doing some you were high on ayahuasca. I don't know.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
You don't even know the drug.
And you were like, "Oh man, this whole movie is like the whole movie is saying the movie is a lie. I'm being conned,
That's
man."
right.
Yeah.
I that is you're being conned by the movies. And I thought of that when I was watching I watched The Abyss on the weekend. And I was like, James Cameron is one of those guys who doesn't want you to be calmed by the movies. He's just like, I'm gonna make the whole ocean
Hmm.
in like a former nuclear reactor, whatever the fuck he made that like billion-gallon tank, and then he poured like black silicone bubbles in this tank, like little like jelly beans almost, to make it dark.
Okay.
Like, who the fuck is doing this stuff? It's kind of the opposite of what what this movie is like I'm gonna make it so real that you have to believe it because there's no reason not to because it is real.
Hmm.
And David Mamet is like, oh, I'm gonna make it all fake.
Yeah, you're gonna believe it because I told you to believe it.
Yeah, because that's how you play it.
Hmm.
But I don't know, it's an incredible movie. I can't believe more people don't know about this movie.
Yeah, yeah, it's well, it doesn't, I guess it's not that shocking. I don't know. I don't really have any because it's just a small movie. I could see people not liking it. I could see people not enjoying the dialogue. I could see people at the end
Mhm.
of it being like, "So what? Was he like the devil or something?" And then just not caring and walking away from it. And
Why would he give them the thing anyway? They're
yeah,
bad guys. Why would he give them the book? What is
yeah,
the process? It's so stupid.
yeah, that would
Because
be
you don't even find out what it is, so it's not worth anything.
That's right. That would be a sticking point for people that they would say, What was the process anyway?" And you're like, "You're still stuck on that? Like, obviously that didn't matter."
Yeah, it's
What do they call that? There's a term for that, isn't there?
a MacGuffin.
A MacGuffin. I was gonna say
Yeah.
MacGuffin. I should have gone with my gut and said
You
MacGuffin.
should have gone with your guy. Yeah, it's I think Hitchcock made that uh particular term up.
Hey, speaking of this, did you must have watched this Quentin Tarantino I guess documentary you'd call it, I guess Q8, I think it's called, or the first
QT8.
eight.
Yeah.
The first eight. You
QT8. Yep.
definitely
Yep.
you watched it. Yeah, okay.
Yes, for sure.
Because you talked about a whole bunch of the things that they talk about in that. I was like, "Oh, this is definitely Jesse was talking to me right after he watched this, for sure."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that documentary is hard to find.
It was not. It was on Roku, I think. Roku
Okay.
or Plex. Roku or
That
Plex. It's on there for
that
free.
qualifies as hard to find because it's like a French made documentary or something. Like it's not available in any kind of physical media in the United States or Canada.
So I sit down at my TV, I click on my remote search, and I
No, no, I
type
get it.
Quentin, and then it's there for free,
I
and I have it
I
in
get
two
it.
seconds.
I
I
get it.
wouldn't call that hard to find.
It's hard to okay, so it's hard to find
A
on
physical
physical
copy.
media. A
Yeah.
physical copy is rare because I had to get like the Region B Blu-ray.
Well, okay, so the reason, so I was watching that one because I watched, oh, what did I watch? Did I write it down? Life After the Navigator. Yeah, I did write it down. So it was on Plex. So Plex, if you don't have Plex, Plex is a cool little free thing. It's like it's just another one of these things that are
Oh, okay.
free, like a Tubi type of thing, and it's got
Yeah.
live streaming free channels on it. and then
Hmm.
it's got a collection of free movies and free things. So I don't know where else this is available. Lots of times they show up on the same. They'll show up on Roku at the
Yeah.
same time they're on Plex for
Yeah.
free. But Life After the Navigator, you heard of it?
No, what's that?
Okay. Do you know who Joey Kramer is?
The name seems familiar. Who's that?
So he's the little kid from Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So it came out in 2020.
Hmm.
Um, do you know anything about Joey Kramer? No, because you didn't know the name.
No, I don't
So
know.
Joey Kramer got arrested for bank robbery in 2015,
Wow.
or 2016, around there. And so that's, and I'm not spoiling anything because that's, I clicked on it and it said Life After the Navigator. It's about the child star Joey Kramer. And that's it. That's all I saw. And so I clicked
Yeah.
play and started watching it. And within the first second, they're like 2016, Joey Kramer arrested for bank robbery, former child
Wow.
star. And so then I'm like, oh, cool. That's in the first 5 seconds of the documentary. So then I'm like, now I'm in. Now I'm going to watch
Yeah.
this whole thing. So then
Yeah.
they go back and it's cool. It's a fun, it's also cool because I just watched Flight of the Navigator again. I think it was right after Paul Rubens died, right? Pee Wee
Okay.
Herman.
Was he in it?
That's Pee Wee Herman, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the voice of the alien spaceship.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, so it was right after he died. I was like, I gotta watch that movie again. I watched it and I was like, it holds up. It's a good movie. It's fun.
Really?
Yeah, so and then I didn't ever look into this child actor to see what happened to him or anything, but then as I was
Hmm.
watching this Life After the Navigator and learning what he shenanigans he got into, and it was kind of fun. They got all kinds of people to
Shenanigans.
talk about him as a kid, the
Yeah.
director of Flight of the Navigator, and it was a lot of them that were involved in Flight of the Navigator just talking about making movies and how fun it was to make movies and how good of an actor he was and how big of a star he could have been. But he was
Yeah.
just some little kid from Vancouver whose
Hmm.
mom, somebody said, you got to get him into the movies. And she was like, I don't want him to be some child star. So it was kind of
Yeah.
different than usually what
Okay.
you hear about
Yeah.
parents
Pushing
uh,
them. Yeah.
pushing them and stuff. So that's probably why she didn't jump at the opportunity to move to LA and force him into it 100% of the time.
Oh,
Went back to school. He did have a big run, like no other movies that you would have heard of, but
really?
big enough that he could have gone on to be a huge star. And then he went back to school and he claims, because he's in the movie a ton, like he's in it the whole way through,
Yeah.
saying that he went back and got bullied and they were making fun of him like, oh, hey, Hollywood,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
get in the locker, Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it was fun. It's a fun watch, especially when you don't know the background. So don't go reading shit about it. They'll just spoil it. Just watch the documentary. It's on Plex.
Okay. I think I've seen Plex.
Okay.
It's one of the ones I've actually heard of. I think I might have like clicked onto it one time and scrolled through it.
Yeah, it's the reason that it's popular is that you can watch your own uh downloaded stuff in Plex. So
What do you
Plex
mean?
is, you can set up a Plex server that serves your own
Oh,
content.
okay.
So my Plex device, for example, like I don't like watching stuff on YouTube. I can't figure out YouTube. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but
What do you mean? You
I
can't figure
can't
it out.
I can't navigate YouTube. If I go and I find a channel that I like this content, I'm like, okay, I want to watch weekly what this guy releases.
Right.
And I can't figure out how to do that. Or if I do watch one of his movies or one of his videos,
Yeah.
I can't ever get back there and figure out how to get back and be like, I want to watch that movie I watched like 4 months ago from that one guy's
Yeah.
channel. If I go there, it'll be like, here's his most popular content. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but did that come out last week or 6 years ago? I want to
Yeah.
watch stuff in chronological order. Okay, I'm rambling. But so I've started just downloading YouTube videos into my Plex server, and then my Plex server feeds it to my Plex on my Roku TV. So I just sit
Oh,
down in front of my
okay.
75-inch TV, open up Plex, and it'll say like YouTube's most recent videos, and then I'll just
Yeah.
watch downloaded stuff. For
Okay.
example, the Electric Playground is releasing their old episodes
Oh, really?
from the 90s They're on to
Okay.
like their third or fourth episode. They're doing it every Saturday morning. And if you like to be a little kid, you can watch Electric Playground episodes from
Electric.
1997.
I want to see you. You can't do that on television episodes.
I never really watched it.
I remember that being like the most controversial thing ever when I was a kid because they were like puking in the desks
Oh yeah.
and there was like the slime and it seemed like unreal. And I remember like every time I watched it, my mom would be like, "Turn that off. That's disgusting. You can't watch it." Same with The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Like they made a big deal of The Simpsons being like this anarchy that kids shouldn't watch,
Yeah.
even though at first it was supposed to be for kids. And then they,
No, I don't
you
agree
don't
with
think
that.
so?
No, it was an on the adult Tracy Ullman show clips. Like it was an
Okay, but
adult.
okay, but after that then. Not okay, I when it first became like an actual series on Fox.
I don't think they ever pointed it at kids. I would say today it's aimed at morons.
Nobody. Do you know they actually admitted that they don't make new Simpsons episodes like for art? They make them for um uh what do you call it? Um like syndication.
Oh yeah.
So they're not making episodes anymore because it's like an artistic endeavor. It's just money.
Yeah, well, that became obvious after the 11th season, I would say.
Yeah. Somewhere I distinctly remember it like in grade 12 or 13 everybody going The Simpsons is over. That was 10 years after it started, maybe
Yeah.
11 years and 30 years ago,
Yeah.
25 years ago,
Hmm.
we were like The Simpsons is over
Yeah.
and they're still making the fucking episodes.
There were some key episodes that came out that were like, wait a minute, this isn't clever. This isn't they're just having guest stars now. Like, wait a minute, Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger are starring in an episode this week, and
Yeah.
that's what they're advertising as tune in this week for a special guest star. And they're like, Homer's just like, oh hi, Alec Baldwin. It's just and I'm like, you're
Yeah.
like, wait, this isn't what happened to this show.
Yeah, somebody said it was when Homer started going on trips.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember him going to Toronto and or New York. There was one. I'm like, I don't know, this isn't making me laugh like it used to.
yeah, they would just go on vacation all the time, or he'd go somewhere, he'd become like a an astronaut or something, and you're like, well, it's not,
No, the astronaut episode is one of the best episodes ever.
is it? I
Yes.
don't know. I remember somebody saying something about the astronaut episode. I
No,
don't think it was
they were wrong.
me, but I remember somebody going, "Oh, he's a fucking astronaut now," or something.
No, that person was wrong. That's one of the best episodes
Yeah.
ever made. It's when he goes into
Was it?
outer space and there it's all based on 2001. Come on. It's great.
I do remember that part of it. But I don't remember most of the
Okay, so
episodes.
Flight of the Navigator, great documentary. Check that out.
Sure.
The First Aid, Quentin Tarantino, I watched.
Hmm.
I liked it, but there's no Quentin in it. That's the problem. I watched it right after
Mm.
watching Flight of the
Yeah.
Navigator when they have Joey Kramer in there. A lot of it said, well, at this
Yeah.
time in my life, I was doing this, then this was happening to me, then this happened. And in the Quentin Tarantino one, everybody talks about him and how awesome he is,
Yeah.
but they don't even have clips of him talking. It's like
Yeah.
just little quotes they put up in text. Here's something that he said one time, and the whole rest of it is everybody else talking about him, which is a different way of making a documentary, but
Yeah.
it lost a lot to me because it what didn't have any of him in there.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think it's supposed to be people giving their appreciation of him.
mhm. Have you watched any of the Fallout TV show? I like it.
Yeah. And I'm a huge, the only video games that I care about are Fallout.
That's why I bring it up because
So
I knew you liked that video game.
I could tell every little thing that they put in it that was and was not like the games.
Oh, that would be
And
distracting.
it's distracting, but at the same time, that's kind of why you watch it. Because you're like, they have to put in this thing and they have to put in the power armor right.
Right,
And they have to do the vaults right.
right.
And I thought it was really good. I watched an episode and a half, I
Hmm.
think, so far. I'm kind of saving it. But I think it's good. The only thing that's kind of different about it's stupid, but is that you don't like in the Fallout games, the point is that there's only one person and they're on their own in this world.
Hmm.
And starting it off and having like a lot of the first episode be a lot of people from the vaults is good, but it's a lot different than Fallout because the point of Fallout is that you're always alone, I
Hmm.
guess, and you don't know sort of who to trust in the game or whatever. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good. I think the main character is good. Obviously, Walt Goggins is going to be great.
Okay, here's
Every
my
time I
only
see him.
problem with it. They play shitty music from the 50s or the
But it's all,
40s.
but it's almost all in the game though.
I get that. I
Okay.
know there's a reason for it,
Okay.
but I don't care. It just, I hate it. I hate that music. It was my same complaint with Boardwalk Empire. I'm like, I get that they're trying to do music from the 20s, but I don't care. Their
Right.
opening credits in Boardwalk Empire is that awesome music, like heavy
Hmm.
metal, and
Yeah.
then they cut to like just that crappy 20s music. So I know they're trying to follow that with
Yeah.
Fallout, but I'm just like, it just sucks. It just takes away from it, the experience. And
Right.
the other problem is they do too much nowadays with the play happy music at the same time that you're
Yeah.
showing a
Yeah.
violent massacre
Violent
scene in
massacre.
slow
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
And that used to be, maybe I'm using the word correctly, a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you did.
nailed
Good
it.
job. Yeah.
Um, and it used to be very jarring when you're watching that.
Yeah.
But after it's been done 10,000 times,
Hmm.
you start to lose a little bit and it becomes
That's right.
hacky. And
True.
now you're just being a hack and it's not interesting at all anymore. And I think
Yeah.
you should try something new, maybe try something
Yeah.
new.
Well, they kind of painted themselves into a corner, I guess, just with the decision to use that music.
Mm-hmm.
So then it all had to be that, and it had to be that over the fight. But you're right. When I saw the fight, and even just a fight in slow motion now, no matter what music, is kind of like I don't know, it didn't not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Like just have the fight in normal motion.
Yeah, I don't even, I can't tell you what to do. Just don't do what's been done 10,000 times because I'm
Yeah.
getting sick of it.
Yeah. No, but it's overall, I think it's good.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think
I
it's
like it.
a good show, and I'm glad they made it. I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Hmm.
There was been talk about a Fallout movie for like 20 years probably, but I'm glad they made it into a show. A show works better.
I would also say you haven't seen it yet because it just came out, Civil War, but I'm looking forward to seeing Civil War. Alex Garland directs it, and
Hmm.
I heard this really quickly. Somebody say Alex Garland has announced that he's going to retire after Civil War, and I'm
Really?
like, why would you do that? This is, you come out with a movie
Yeah.
that like is such, there's a lot of buzz around this movie, and you go, I'm done.
Yeah.
He hasn't even made that many. Like he just made that movie we both like called Men, which we
Yeah, man. That
and
was
I'm
fun.
still like, I went back and watched most of it again, and I was like, this is
Yeah,
really an interesting movie to think about.
it is. Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm done. I find that so weird. I hope it's not true. I hope it was just a rumor, but
Yeah, I've liked all his movies. And they're all so different too, right? Like you wouldn't think the same guy who made Annihilation made Men, and the same guy who made Men made Civil War.
Ex
And I'm
Machina,
forgetting his Ex Machina. Yeah, that
oh, it
was
was
a good
awesome. It
movie.
was
Yeah, I like that
fantastic.
movie.
But I loved his show that he made, Devs, which is
Oh
fucking
yeah, I
amazing.
which I haven't quite gotten through yet.
I loved it, man.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
great.
Hope that's not true. I hope he doesn't retire after Civil War, and I can't wait to see
Probably
Civil War.
not. Well, Quentin Tarantino says he's going to retire after his next movie, and nobody believes that either. So
Well, don't pressure him into it because I don't want that to be true. So,
Okay.
um,
Well, I'll try not to.
okay. So the most awkward line award in The Spanish Prisoner goes to um, so something about my sister. Oh, your sister, is she young and pretty? That wins the most awkward line. Who says that to somebody when they talk about their sister? Uh,
Exactly.
no, that was from Campbell Scott says that to Steve Martin after he mentions I have a sister. Oh, is she young and pretty? You tell me, and he shows her a picture. I guess that wins the most awkward response award. You tell me, check this out. What okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, it's kind of a plot device that he has to he has to know that she's hot, I guess.
Okay. The only time Campbell Scott seems like he is a good actor is when he's mad at Steve Martin. And
Wow.
I said, let them have emotions, David. Come on.
I think
Because
Campbell Scott's a fantastic actor.
in this movie, he's not. And neither is Rebecca
Really?
Pigeon. They're both
And
not
you've
good.
said that before.
And it's true before, and it's still true today. And I
I
watched Steve
don't,
Martin in this movie, and he's fine. He's doing the same dialogue, but he just seems fine to me. Whatever little bit of inflection and
yeah,
whatever he's adding to it, I don't have a problem with Ricky
yeah,
Jay. I don't have a
yeah.
problem with Steve Martin. I don't have a problem with Klein, his boss. Who was that? You said his name.
Ben Gazzara.
Ben Gazzara seems fine,
Yeah.
but Campbell Scott and Rebecca Pigeon, you're whoa. This like
Really?
yeah. And so I said, let them have emotions because he seems fine when he's a little bit pissed off at Steve Martin. Then I was like, okay, he's acting there.
I like that he kind of doesn't have emotions because you don't know how he's going to fall for the con, right? You don't know if he's going to go for the money. You don't know if he's going to go for the girl. And I think the con people are also not supposed to know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if he gives anything away, then they'll know how to manipulate him easier. And his whole like you gotta think about the whole premise of the movie is that he's just done this amazing thing. I think they said they can control global warming with the process or something like that. So you don't know if they're trying to make more global warming or less global warming or what, right? So you don't know if
I
the
think he
company.
says the global markets. I
Oh,
think
I thought they
it's
said global warming.
I think it's about controlling the
Oh,
stock
okay.
market.
That makes more sense.
But I
I
could be
thought they
wrong.
said control global warming.
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Maybe. Anyway, okay. Either way, whatever it is, you don't know if they're doing it for a good purpose. You don't know if they're doing it for a bad purpose. So you don't know if he's like a nice guy or if he's a bad guy. If
Sure.
he's trying to do something good for the world or bad. Plus, he has just invented something that's so important and so secret that he's got to be so careful not to say anything about it, right?
Hmm.
So he's got to be careful not to say anything to anybody else. He's got to be careful not to jeopardize his spot at the company. He's got to be careful when he's um, negotiating the money that he's going to get. Like and people keep saying you're going to get pushed out. Like Steve Martin keeps saying they're going to screw you and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what his character is going through is just this situation where he has to be so careful about everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he seems sort of muted, like he doesn't have any emotion or anything, because everybody he's talking to, he can't say so much to, or he can't say the wrong thing to his boss, or he can't say the wrong thing to Ricky Jay. So he's in this time at his life where he's waiting for this huge payout and he's kind of like right before the the grand opening or whatever, or his sort of becoming a superstar in this world. He's got to play everything perfectly so he achieves all that. And I think that's why he's so sort of guarded, which I think is a great performance. And I don't know what you're talking about with Rebecca Pigeon because I think she's great. and I think but you also have to remember that she's playing a character as well, right?
You
So
also
she,
have to remember that David Mamet is standing behind the camera going, "Stop doing stuff and just say the words." And
well,
I'm sure he was dating Rebecca Pigeon or married to her or
I
something at the
think they were
time, or
married at the time. Yeah, I think they were. I think he ditched
and
Lindsay Krause.
yeah, I think that's right.
I think he ditched her. She was okay. She was terrible in House of Games. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
She
every spouse he has is
no,
terrible.
but I think what I think
I
I
saw
think that
Rebecca Pigeon in other stuff, and I didn't think she was a bad actress. I've seen her in other
yeah,
stuff, but
but
just in this,
yeah.
because David Mamet is standing there, like holding up a petition for divorce or something to frighten her. I don't know what he's doing to her, but
I think that the people think he's doing that, but I think why isn't why isn't Ed O'Neill or why isn't Ricky Jay or any of these people doing the same thing? And I think that some people are taking him maybe too literally,
yeah.
like Campbell Scott and Rebecca Pigeon, if you subscribe to that, which I don't really. They're taking him too literally, and the other people are like, I'm just going to do whatever I was going to do anyway.
Hmm.
And I think that's why
The mark
you
of a
get
bad director. The people that listen to him
yes,
act shitty, and the
yeah,
good actors
possibly,
elevate above the director's
possibly, or they're
direction.
just or or he's kind of cultivated this before they start the movie, right? Like he cultivated in his theater thing,
Mhm.
in all of his talks, and then maybe he's not really directing the movie that way. People just think that they have to do that. I don't
Speaking
know.
of taking things too literally, there's a point where they have the poster in the background that says "loose lips sink ships,"
Yeah,
and it just reminds me every time I see that some people take that phrase too literally. They take it so seriously
hmm,
that they just halt all progress in a company or in life or whatever.
sure,
Because I remember my boss, I guess Mike Ford at Mr.
yeah,
Sub. He used to pull that line out all the time. He used to be like
really,
loose lips. And I'm like, and then his boss, the owner of the company, the founder,
yeah,
Yankee, would be like, I'll tell you a story about how we did this and we did that. He'd tell you everything,
yeah,
honestly and truthfully. And then the guy below him, Mike, would be like, don't say anything to anybody. And I'm like, but the guy above you is saying everything to everybody.
yeah,
I don't know where you're getting this loose
yeah,
lips
yeah.
philosophy. And anyways, that just reminds me of that. That's
And
all.
if you're all supposed to be working on the same team, why are there secrets?
Because some people take that too literally, that and too seriously. They just think keep everything secret. That's the goal
Yeah,
of organization. Keep everything
yeah,
secret. Only tell people what they need to know and barely enough to get by. And all it does is keep the people at the lowest level dumb.
yes,
And then it makes them appear dumb and they don't learn anymore. And then when those dumb people get a little bit more knowledge and get elevated a little bit to a higher position, they think now I don't tell anything to people below me and they keep them dumb. It's really
yeah.
just a bad philosophy. That's I hate the philosophy of loose lips.
Yeah, knowing more than everybody else is a power thing too, right? So the more that Mike knows,
Yeah,
the
it's a
less
power
everybody
thing.
else knows, the more power he has,
It's
right?
for sure it's a power thing, and it was at every other company I've had experiences with. That's the philosophy. The people above never tell anything. They keep everything
Yeah,
secret, never tell people the wrong thing. And
yeah,
then, but at Mr. Sub, the owner of the company would tell you everything that was going on. He would show
yeah,
you all the financial records about everything, and it
yeah,
made me feel like more important, more valued. I would
yeah,
learn more. I would get smarter. I'd go out there with more confidence. There's just
yeah,
so many benefits to it that I'm
yeah,
like, wow, all these other companies just have the backwards philosophy. Okay,
yeah.
that's my little philosophy rant.
No, I liked it. I like your philosophy. I have a rant of my own,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna say, as a
Rant. Go for it. Get ramped up. I want to hear
but
a
I want to
rant.
say, as a guy who's lifted weights for, the better part of 30 years now, almost 25 years, let's say,
Get
I've
fired up.
learned I've
Fired
learned a
up.
few things that people don't seem to understand. And I don't know if you want to listen to this, if you want to take some of these tips.
I
I,
want to hear
I
your
just
rant. Go, go, go.
just stop doing that. I'm gonna tell you what you should be looking out for when you lift weights. Okay? If you piss yourself, you're lifting too much weights. If you shit yourself, you're lifting too much weight. And if you start bleeding out of your nose, you're lifting too much weight. Because I see all these videos on TikTok or whatever, and people, the shit is just exploding out of people. You don't need to do that. You can lift less weight. You don't have to lift the amount, the maximum amount that you possibly can. That's making your body reject the whole thing that you're doing to it. Like those are warning signs, I think. So that's what I want to say. If you piss yourself when you're lifting weights, that's too much weight. Just too much. That's all I want to say.
All right. I
Because
like it.
people seem to I was reading like comments on videos and people are like, this is what peak performance is. And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think that is it. I think it's when you feel good about yourself, not shit yourself. Anyway, let's go on. Have you watched the last season of Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
Was it not the best?
Was it not the best?
I
Yes.
think I
It
would say
was
it was the
not the
best.
best.
I think it was the best season. There were some
uh,
pretty amazing episodes in there.
wow.
Really? No?
Um, no, it was fine. I felt that it's gone downhill for several of the last seasons. So no, maybe it's just fatigue,
Yeah.
Larry David fatigue.
I don't know. I thought this one was really good.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you. Um and I don't think I have too much else to talk about. Oh, one thing I think actually, if you could tell me legally, maybe you know about this. If I do a commercial on the radio and I say this is the first radio commercial that you can smell, and that's the 985th time that that line has been used, can someone sue me?
I don't. Yeah.
Because I heard a radio commercial for like Wendy's Cinnabons or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they said this is the first radio commercial you can smell. But
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that 1,000 times, so it's not the first one.
Right.
Unless they're saying all those other people are liars, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was like the first person who did that, I'd be like, can I sue this person? They're making a false claim because I already made that claim like 25 years ago.
Right. Right. Yeah, sure. I don't know. I don't know, Jesse. We
Okay.
haven't talked about Meeks Cutoff at all.
We haven't. You know what else we haven't talked about?
What?
Your hero who died this week,
I don't know.
OJ.
OJ? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, enough said. He's dead. Um, Meeks
Wow.
Cutoff from 2011.
Right?
I should hate this movie. It's super slow.
Yep.
The scenes stay up way too long.
Right?
It's in the 4:3 aspect ratio, which Jesse hates a lot more than me. I do see your point. But on my
Yep.
giant 75-inch TV, I don't even notice it lots of the time.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but it stays up way too long. There's no need. The camera just keeps rolling after all the characters have walked out of the frame. But I like it. I like the
Yeah.
movie. And it was the same thing when we watched First Cow, too. I liked
Yeah.
it. And I was like, I should be hating this, but I don't mind it. I know that it's slower
Mm.
than it needs to be. Also though, we watched Heaven's Gate, and I was throwing stuff at my TV screen when they kept the scenes going for way too long. So I
Yeah.
don't really know the difference between the two. And that's pretty much all I wrote down. Oh, it's way too dark.
Yeah. A lot of
um,
the time. Yeah.
it's and I watched it during the day, so it was
Yeah.
extra worse because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
light out,
The
and it was
glare and
there was I
yeah.
just had to it was just blackness on the screen, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
guess I'll just guess what's going on based on the
For long
sound.
stretches, there was
I should have
blackness.
watched it in a dark room. That's my fault.
Yeah.
But I just listened to it and figured out what was going on. But I like the movie. I like it.
I think what the difference is between this movie that you liked and Heaven's Gate, which you didn't like, is atmosphere. Is that this movie from the very first cultivates this atmosphere of this is what this movie's going to be, right? You see them and they're just kind of trundling along with the wagons and not much is happening, but that's what it's promising you, right? That's what it's saying this movie is going to be about. It's going to
Hmm.
be about a hard trip on a brown landscape,
That's true.
and you're not going to get anything else. And if you got anything else, then you would start expecting to keep getting that thing, right? Like if the natives came and attacked them, you'd be like, okay, well there was an action scene. Now stuff is happening, right?
Yeah.
But you never get that. It always maintains the same level of that brown palette. Not much is going on. People are just kind of arguing and sort of fighting amongst themselves a little bit, or just kind of sniping at Bruce Greenwood's character for being a fake tour guide or whatever it is. And I think that this movie gives you what it promises it's going to give you.
Yeah.
It accomplishes what it's setting out to do, which is just showing you that life back then sucked. There were no GPSs. There were no roads.
Yeah.
There were no signs. You couldn't pull over. There's that you didn't get to the next town eventually that day. There's no gas stations, right? Like you're just out on these flat plains. You're probably going somewhere that's terrible. Like whenever you get to the place that you're going, it's probably still shit.
That's true.
It's probably just a shitty patch of land
Yeah.
that's the same as the land that you've been going through for 20 days.
Yeah. I think you
And
just
then you
nailed it.
live there.
You nailed it, and that does. I was listening to you as you spoke, and trying to think back and think you nailed it. I think if I remember correctly, Heaven's Gate starts with them at college and like going off to college and
There's
oh,
dances and yeah,
dances that go on forever, and you're like, what the
yeah,
fuck am I in for here? Like
yeah,
what? And then the next scene is completely different, and then you're like, oh, okay, so it's going to be an adventure they're going to go on, and then there's just like another dance that goes on for 20 minutes, and you're like, is this a dancing movie? I don't know what this is, what it's trying to be. Whereas
yeah,
Meeks Cutoff, yeah, it starts off with them crossing a river, which looks very difficult, but they
yeah,
all get through it,
yeah.
and you're like, this is what it's going to be. And like, what happens after that? A wagon wheel falls off, and they got to deal with
Yeah,
that. Like, just little shit
yeah,
that you're
yeah,
like, oh, this becomes
yeah.
so much. Oh, they get to that hill at one point, and they're like, how are we going
Yeah,
to get
they're
down the hill? They're like,
lowering it down the hill.
you're
Yeah,
like, that's what they had to fucking do. They had to get a
yeah,
rope and like back this thing down. So, but then also, it's not completely boring because you've got that First Nations guy who's along with them,
yep,
and you don't really know what he's up to.
yeah.
You want to be like, let's trust him, but
Hmm.
there's nothing on his face to let you know that you could trust him. Meaning
Hey,
his expressions or anything.
he can't
His
speak the same language.
You never know what he's saying.
Yep.
And you don't want to side with Bruce Greenwood, but in the back of your mind, you're like, maybe Bruce Greenwood's right. Maybe Meek is right.
He should theoretically have experience with this, right?
And if you know the backstory, if you actually know, then you could be if you could be thinking he is he is the promise of their demise. You know that
Mhm.
that is based on the party that never made it to their destination, right?
Yes.
So you don't know why they're not going to get there. So maybe you think
Yeah.
the movie's going to reveal that, and maybe you think that
Mhm.
guy, that First Nations character, is going to be the reason for that.
Yeah.
Um, but you don't necessarily have to know that. You can just be suspicious of him. Like I didn't know that backstory until after I'd watched the movie.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's really not much more to it than you're just getting to see something that was commonplace in this world, and you're not privy to these amazing things that happen, like in the movie that we're going to watch next week, The Searchers, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not an action movie. It's a and this director is sort of known for that. Just these little movies where not too much happens, but you get to see people living their lives. And I think it's sort of easier to place yourself in this movie than in a lot of movies, right? Like I couldn't really place myself in The Spanish Prisoner, but I could place myself in this movie because probably a lot of people did that back in those days. They just had to go from one place to another. If they arrived from Europe or whatever, they would have to go and find their families, or they would have to go and find whatever land that they bought.
And all you're basing it on is just like a rumor. If you arrive and you're at a certain town and
Mhm.
you've got no prospects or anything, and you just hear
Yeah,
people in town saying, I heard
yeah.
in the city of, where would they be going on the Oregon Trail?
Portland, maybe? I don't know.
Sure.
I have no idea.
I have no idea either, but like whatever town, I heard that the town of, I always want to go to like Deadwood.
Deadwood.
I heard that Deadwood, there's so much gold you can just
Yeah.
uh sift it out of the creek with your hands and you'll be rich. So you're like, well, do we risk it all and travel across the country? Like
Mhm.
the only thing stopping us is a 30-day trip across the country on these wagons, and let's go for it. We can make our fortune. The sky's the limit. And so you go for it, and then you get out there and you're like, this is tougher than I thought it was going to be. Especially when
Yeah.
you discover that your guide is full of shit, like they
Yeah.
discover.
But you also have nothing better to do. Like there's none of the modern distractions, right? Like you don't have a job, you don't have family, probably, if you just come from somewhere else. Like you there's really like nothing else. There's nothing else to do. You're not leaving a good place to go to a better place. You're leaving nowhere to also go nowhere.
Okay.
So it was such a different sort of thing back then, of everybody had to kind of make something from nothing, right? Like you never started with anything,
Okay.
especially if you're, coming from, a farm or something like that, right? You can't just stay on that farm forever. Or if you're coming from overseas, you get off a boat, you got to go somewhere.
Right. I'm not really
And
sure what your point is,
I
though.
don't know what my point is either.
Oh, okay. Well,
Um,
yeah, and then there's sometimes there'd be other states that would be just giving you land. You come out here, you can have
yeah,
a parcel of land as long as you get here and you maintain it. So you're like, all
yeah,
right, if we risk our lives and we travel across the country, we've got a free home. And
yeah,
then it's ours, and we get to just live there as long as we work the land, which we were prepared to do anyways.
yeah,
It's pretty smart for these countries to just start welcoming people in and saying, like, you can have land as long as you work on it. It just gives people hope
yeah.
from other shittier countries where they have no hope at all. There's like, I'll risk my life for a chance.
Yeah, and
Um,
you get a better tax base. Like it's good for everybody, right? Like you produce food.
except for the First Nations people. Wasn't good for them.
No,
Let's
and
not forget that.
I was actually in a course on Friday all about the First Nations and the indigenous people, and it was eye-opening.
Yeah.
Nothing good has ever been done to them by the government,
Yeah.
And the guy who was leading it, he was like, make no mistake, they're still like screwing us today.
Yeah.
It's not good. We're still under like we're still being oppressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, like he's right.
He is right. It's very sad because, and I've said this before, but I think that as much as race relations is very hot topic in the US today
Mhm.
and around the world, the one thing that nobody blinks an eye at in the States, in the US especially, is calling them Indians still. The most
Yeah.
offensive thing I can
Oh yeah.
imagine is if you just don't bother to realize you've been calling them the wrong name
Yeah.
for the last 200 years because you don't give a shit.
And
Because
yeah.
somebody arrived 200 years ago and went, I think we're in India. That must
Yeah.
be an Indian. And
Yeah.
200 years later,
Yeah.
we're still doing it. I know you're trying to cut me off here, but let's come back. Or do you got to go?
I
You got to
gotta
wrap it
go.
up? Okay.
I gotta go. But that's a
Next
good
week,
segue
Searchers, and
into
next
this.
week, way, way back, and that's it.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.